Hey everyone, Mr. Skelton here. We are back at it for lesson 7 in unit 6, and today we are going to be talking about really two things. And the first one is how we're going to simplify and expand. Now I'm going to change the word simplify. I'm going to also refer to this as condense or to shrink. Okay? So we're going to condense and expand expressions using three properties of logarithms. And so the three properties of the logarithms is where we're going to start today's notes. And the reason, the purpose that we need to learn these logarithm properties is because in a couple lessons it's going to allow us to solve exponential equations. Okay? And so that's the whole purpose. That's kind of what we're building towards. So what we're going to jump right into it, and what I'm going to do is, I guess I'm going to skip ahead just so I can show you this here. I'm going to go to the very, let's see, second to last page. You're going to see these three properties. These are the three right here. 1, 2, 3. We have what's called the product property, the quotient property, and the power property. And you'll see their properties. And so, you can look at this and see what's happening with each property, or it's a formula. All right, some people will want to memorize these, but what I'm going to do in the first few slides is show you how we're getting this. I'm going to show you how these work, and not just show you the property and then you just plug in numbers. Okay, I think it's important you see how it works. So I'm going to go through these starting on page 1, and I'm going to start actually with number 2 because I want to go with number 1 second. So let's just look at number 2, okay? And I want us to evaluate this. What is log base 2 to the 8? Well, if you remember from a couple sections ago, log base 2 to the 8 equals what? Like if I wanted you to evaluate log base 2 to the 8, what is that? That's 2 to the x equals 8, right? And 2 to what power? Remember, what does log mean? What power on 2 gives you 8? That's going to be 3. So really, log base 2 of 8 is just normal 3 plus evaluate log base 2 of 4. What power on 2 gives you 4? 2. And so we know that whatever this is here has to make 5 because we know that 3 plus 2 equals 5. So what has to go here? What power on 2, okay, is going to generate and be equal to 5? Well, that means 2 to the 5th power, right? Because we would go 2 to the 4th is 4, 2 to the 3rd is 8, 2 to the 5th is going to give us 32. So 32 is what we would get for the question mark. Now what I want you to focus on is how did we get this 32 from these numbers? And I'm kind of circling, kind of giving you some hints here. Okay? Let's jump down to number 3. Let's convert let's evaluate log base 3 of 3. What's log base 3 of 3? Well, if you need to, off to the side, log base 3 of 3 equals what? 3 to the x equals 3. What power goes in there? 1. What power on 3 gives you 9? 2. So we know this has to equal a 3, right? So if this right here has to be a 3, 3 to what power on 3 will give us the 3? Okay, and we should have 27. All right? Excuse me. Because 1 plus 2 is 3, and 3 to the 3rd is going to give you 27. Now the first one, remember I skipped this one because remember if you don't have, that's the common log. Remember common log is base 10. And I'm going to skip this one because it's the same process. So again, I want to go to this. How did we get 27? I want you to focus on these numbers. If you turn the page, that is an example of the power or the product property. So if you have a plus sign, this is key. If you have a plus sign, that means you are going to turn it into multiplication when you condense. So we are condensing here. This is an example of condensing. We are taking something with 2 logs with a plus sign in the middle, And we would take then whatever m is and times it by n. And we would times those here. For example, if you go back to the first page, 3 times 9 is the 27. 8 times the 4 gave me the 32. Again, these are examples of me just showing you how that works without knowing the shortcut, showing you actually how it works. Okay? And this is an example of condensing. We went from 2 logs to 1 simple log here. Okay, got the same thing now. So now we're going to be talking about the second property. And if you look at all these, they all have minus signs in the middle. The ones that we just did all have plus signs in the middle. So let's start at number 5. Again, I'm going to skip number 4. It's not the greatest example to start with. So again, let's evaluate this. 2 to what power equals 8? 2 to the third is 8. Minus 2 to what power gives you 4? 2. So we know this has to equal a 1, right? And so log base 2 of what gives you 1? Well, that's going to be a 2. This should be a 2 right there, because that's going to give you 1, right? Log base 2 of 2 should equal 1. Okay? Now, the question again remains the same. How are we getting this 2 based on these numbers here? Again, these are all minus signs. All right? Let's take a look at number 6. What power, that's what log means, what power on 3 gives you 27? What power on 3, or what power to the third gives you 27? That would be a 3, right? 3 to the third is 27. Minus, what power on 3 gives you 9? 3 squared gives you 9. So we know that this right here has to give us a 1. What power on 3 is going to give us 1? That would be a 3, right? Because what power of 3 gives you 3? 1. Sorry, I said that wrong. What power on 3 gives us 3? 1. So the question again becomes, how are we getting this 3 from the 9 and the 27? Hopefully you should see that we are doing what? We're dividing. 27 divided by 9 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Again, these are all minus signs. And again, this is condensing. All right? We're making these things smaller. So what we just figured out is the quotient property. What we just talked about was the quotient property. Look at the quotient property. It has a minus sign always in the middle. If you have a minus sign, you are dividing your m and your n. Just quick review product property. If it's a plus sign in the middle, then you're timesing them together, m and n. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm going to make it clear here because I have both properties, I'm going to highlight something important. You can only do this. You can only do this if the bases are the same. Okay? So if you notice B and B, B and B, but if you just flip back real quick and you look at all these examples, log base 2, log base 2, log base 2 in your answer. Log base 3, log base 3, log base 3 in your answer. So you have to have the same base if you're going to do this. All right, and the last one, this is kind of a tough one to kind of show, but I'm going to show it to you anyways here. And it's more of just trying to figure out how this works. I want to look at just this log base 5 of 5. What is log base 5 of 5? Log base 5 of 5 is 1, right? But if you now erase that, so you can see log base 5 of 5, and you know what 5 squared is. Log base 5 squared is 25. Well, what would that be? Log base 5 of 25 equals x. So what power on 5 gives you 25? 2, of course, right? So that's 2. So how did we go from here, 1, to turn it into now what it should be, which is 2 is the answer? Okay? How did we get that? And we're going to focus on this exponent separate from the log. This is the common log, right? Log base 10. So log base 10, now what's log base 10 of 100? Well, off to the side, what power on 10 gives you 100? That's going to be 2, right? So we know that this is a 2 on its own if we just ignore the 3. If we just ignore the 3, that's a 2. Now, let's go back and erase the box. What's 100? What's 100 to the third power? I can just go 100 raised to the third. and you should get, let's see, 1, 2, 3, it's a million, right? I should have known that. So really this is log base 10. If I evaluate this and do the actual 10 to the third, that's a million. So what's log base 10 of a million? Well, that should be 6, right? 10 to the 6th power is going to give you our million. So how did we, this answer is actually a 6. Well, how did we go from 2 to make it a 6? And I want to focus on this 3 and this 2. Now, if you'll notice, you'll see 2 times 1 gives us 2, and 3 times 2 gives us 6. Now, if that didn't make sense to you, I understand I can kind of go more into detail about how that works, but this 7 and 8, these examples, are examples of our very last property, which if you turn the page, is the power property. So we have 3 properties. We have the product property, which has a plus sign in the middle, which means you multiply. We have the quotient property, which always has a minus sign in the middle of the 2 logs, which means you're dividing the m and the n. And then we have what's called the power property. The power property is if you have a power, x, on the m, that x just comes out in front, okay? That x would come out in front. So that's how it's going to work. If you go back to those examples, right, that we just did, log base 5 of 5 is 1. If I bring that out in front, 2 times 1 gives us my 2. Log base 10 to 100, we know that was 2 just on its own. If you bring the 3 out in front, 3 times 2 gives us 6. So that's how it works, okay? What you need to know is right here. This is what you have to know. This is going to help us expand and condense. Okay, so now that we know our properties, let's put them into practice. This says examples of simplifying. What I'm going to rephrase this and say condensing. So we want to make this smaller, all right, or we want to shrink it. So let's use our properties. We have base 5, we have base 5. Great. Plus sign. What does plus sign mean? It means the product property. So we're going to take 2 and 6 and get log base 2, 2 times 6, log base 5, 2 times 6, 12. And that's all we're going to do. So we took 2 separate logs and condensed them into a single log using the power property. Now, they'll get a little tougher as we go. Notice we have this 3 out in front. If something's out in front, that means it can go here. Remember, we're condensing. This 3 is out front, so it can go here. So really what we have is log base b, 4 to the 3rd power should be 64, just double checking, yep. Should be 64 minus log base b of 2 to the 3rd, which is 8. Now we got to take it one more step. I have a minus sign, means division, so I'm going to take my 64 and my 8, and I'm going to get log base b of 64 divided by 8, which should be log base b of 8, and that is our answer in condensed form. Okay? Try number 11 on your own, hit pause, and then check back with me. Okay, got 2 out in front. That 2 needs to go onto the x. Scribble that out. So now I have log base b of x squared minus log base b of y. Minus sign means quotient property, so I'm going to use division. And what am I going to divide? I'm going to divide these 2 right here. So my final answer becomes log base b of x squared over y. Whatever is listed first goes on the numerator. Whatever is listed second always goes on the denominator, and that becomes my condensed answer there. Okay? And our last slide here, now we're going, I think it's the last slide, yep. Now we're going to expand. So we're going to just do the opposite of what we just did. So it's the opposite of condensing. So in other words, you're basically going to start, if you look at number 11 that we just did, if I cover this part up, you're going to start with this, okay, in this box. You're going to start with our answer that we just had, and you're actually going to turn it into that. So we're just going backwards, okay? So you need to recognize on number 12 here, division. Well, what does division mean? That's the quotient property, which needs to turn, if you go backwards, it needs to turn into subtraction. So this becomes log base 3 of x. Remember, the numerator is always first. Subtract log base 3 of y. And that would be our answer. That's an example of condensing, or excuse me, expanding. We're making it larger. Now, when you look at this one, we have a couple things going on here. we have a to the third times b to the fourth, so times. And we have exponents. And when you expand with the exponents, those exponents need to go out in front. But you always do the exponents second after you either add or subtract based on what we have here. So we have a times sign. That's the product property, which means addition. So the first thing we need to do is go log base 7 of a to the third plus log base 7 of b to the fourth. Okay? And then if we're going to take it one more step further, which we have to because we have powers there, now those need to come out in front of our log. So our final answer becomes 3 log base 7 of a plus 4 log base 7 of b. And that would be the condensed form. Okay? So we'll get plenty of practice. And again, the whole point of this is to get us ready for when we start to solve exponential equations, which is coming at you pretty soon. If you have questions, I'll be happy to help you in class and look forward to ironing out any questions you may have over the material. Take care.